any other staff that this bed is held, and we do this so that nobody will inadvertently enter another client into the same room with another family. So it's kind of a little safety thing to put that fourth bed on hold while the Jones family is residing in family room 3. Somehow somebody put a single woman into a family room, so I've done this on purpose in order to show you how to switch rooms for a client. I'm going to put Janet down into the women's barracks. So I click on her name and I'm going to reassign her unit or her bed, and I'm going to select the women's barracks. Now we see what beds I have available down here. The taken ones do not display in this pop-up window. So I'm going to put her in bed 3, select bed 3, and I'm going to scroll to the bottom of the pop-up window and save and exit. And that moves her down into bed 3, freeing up family room 1. Now again, as I told you, I have some data entry I need to do on Bradley here. And the place that we always do our data entry in order for the dates to stay correct is from within the program entry window. The program entry window will ensure that the data that we enter will be time stamped and date stamped the same as the program entry, and that is essential. So we don't really have to jump into Client Point in order to do that. I'm going to click on Bradley's name. It opens up his unit entry data window. And if I scroll up a little bit, I see 4 tabs up here. We have the Entry Exit tab, the Release of Information tab, and we have the Service Transactions tab. If I click on the Entry Exit tab, it displays Bradley's program entry into my facility. In order to get to the assessment that is attached to the program entry, I click on the pencil next to the entry date. That's the date that I want my information to be stamped with in order for my reports to run correctly. So I'm going to click on the edit pencil next to the program entry. And bear in mind, when you're working with households in your shelter, the first thing you should do is click on the Add Household Data button. What this will do, and you can do this on singles as well if you wish, it doesn't matter. This is going to display some crucial questions that should be stamped the same on all family members. So you can fill out the household data sharing and get all these crucial answers to these important questions from one screen stamped on everyone's record. So in the ESP TANF assessment, now you may also be using an ESG assessment. It will contain the same questions that are necessary for this workflow inside the ESG assessment. Be aware that the household data is just a shortened version of those questions. There are more than what you will find in here, which are very important to each client, such as date of birth and gender. So now that I have my program entry open, I see the assessment attached to it. We see the security settings, and you can click on this and examine it further if you wish. Unless we're doing motel or rent billing, we're going to leave the sub-assessment alone. It is only for motel or rent clients. Scrolling down the screen, I see the fields I need to answer, which need to be stamped the same date as the program entry. And I can just tab in between my questions, hit the first letter of the answer that I wish to insert here, and tab along. This is a very important question. Since he's a single male, he is not TANF eligible. Now, is the client homeless? This is a shelter we're working in. These people are being sheltered. So the answer to this question must be yes. We do not say no, they're not homeless just because they're staying in a homeless shelter. We have to demonstrate that we really are operating with homeless people. Now, to get the true meaning of homelessness, their housing status must also be literally homeless. So I'm going to hit the L here and put literally homeless in the housing status question. Please bear in mind, this is the question which should be updated on program exit. So in other words, when I exit this client, if he's going to his own apartment or some other stable housing arrangement, I will want to change the literally homeless answer to the housing status question to stably housed. But I will want to stamp that with the program exit date. For entry date, the answer should be literally homeless. Bradley is not chronically homeless, basically because he does not have a disability. Prior living situation, I'm going to put place not meant for habitation. And how long was he there? 1 to 3 months. What's the zip code of his last permanent residence? We get that from the client. And what quality is that information, and what county did that client come from? Now, another important question on every client is household size. Bradley's living alone, so we're going to put one adult. What is his health condition? We put all these answers down. You may have recorded them on paper beforehand. I can skip the pregnant question. Disability, since he has none, I will put no. Please bear in mind, if you do say yes here, you must further document the type of disability by clicking the Add button on the Disability Subassessment and adding one or more disabilities to the client record. Next, I want to answer whether or not this is a veteran. I'm going to say no. What is the total monthly income? I'm going to put 0 in this case. However, if I did put a number amount greater than 0, I would want to answer the next question as a yes, income received from any source in the past 30 days. Further, I would want to document what that income was or where it was from by adding that income to the monthly income subassessment. Subassessments, again, can contain more than one record. So perhaps your clients are getting SSI or SSDI or both. You could document that income in the monthly income and the non-cash benefit sections of your assessment. When you are done, click Save and Exit. And so once the entry pop-up window closes, I'm going to click Save and Exit on the on the tabbed window that shows the entry exit, and also the other tabs for other information. Just so that you know, the Service Transactions tab will take you to here another set of tabs. We have our needs, our services. These are regular services that you record. You can add your services from here. This would be for things other than the automated shelter service. We notice we have access to referrals for this client, and the Shelter Stays tab, which will display the automated service that is going on in the background from checking the client into the bed. The Shelter Stays services creates the services that make up your unit report or your bed nights report in the Reports tab of the control panel. So that's where this information is contained. I'm going to save and exit, and I should see some more information on Bradley, and I do. I see his date of birth and his gender. Now, one more thing we should notice on this bed list screen is the group ID column. Notice that anyone who's in a household, all of the household members share the same group ID number. In this second household, these 3 members all have the same group ID number. Whenever we have a single client, we don't see a group ID number. The group ID number is what connects household members together as a household in the system. Kind of similar if you're used to using ClientPoint to creating a program entry for a household. They all got checked in on the program entry from the same screen. It's the same thing in ShelterPoint. When we check a family in, we check them all in on the same screen. And that's what gives us or populates that group ID field whenever you have a household. So if you ever see a household and one of the members does not display a group ID, you have an error. Somebody checked that household member in separately and the group ID number does not display. If you should do that, be aware your client is going to show as a single individual and an adult, even if it's a kid, on some of the other system reports. So, be aware when you are looking at this screen that it can display to you some potential errors that you may have going on. The process of checking a client in to ShelterPoint begins with your unit list or your bed list, the screen I'm on here. I'm going to check in a single male, so I'm going to navigate to my men's barracks section, find an empty bed, and click on the word empty on the bed I wish to put the client into. That's going to open up the client search screen. From the client search screen, I'm going to type in the first and last name of the person that I want to put into the bed, and I'm going to click or hit enter from the last name field. Otherwise I would click search. In this case, the system does not find a potential match, so I'm going to use the add new client with this information button to add a new client to the system. Here we see the client display along with the ID number the system has assigned. I click on the plus next to the name and notice the little houses here. This demonstrates that this client record was created in the provider page that I'm operating in. So that's what it means if you see a little house icon next to the client name. So clicking the plus sign, I pull the client record up and I'm on his check-in screen. We see that I'm putting him into men's barracks bed number 5. Now, the most important item to examine while you're entering a client into a bed is the date in. Make sure this is correct. So if you're doing later data entry, you have to be sure to make sure you have the right entry date into the bed. So we're going to say Jerry came in back on the 24th. And I'm going to scroll down the screen where we find the households overview section. Now Jerry does not have a household, so there's none in here. For those of you who do families or households of people, you can start a new household from this section, or perhaps you've opened a client that already has a household. You can adjust the household from this section as well. If there is a household, this next section down is where it will allow you to include household members with the client that you're checking in. Remember that group ID field. To create a group ID on each household members, you would select their names and assign them beds from the same screen, this screen, that you are using to check in the original person. Scrolling down a little further, we see that all-important release of information, and I have none in here. So I need to add a release. Furthermore, it needs to be a yes release. Otherwise, my information that I record on this client isn't going to share to my funder or to my other provider pages that I have set up in my sharing setup. I want to make sure that this release begins on the same day that the client